Welcome to Holy Shit, where we process and heal from religious trauma and reclaim the divinity discarded by the church. My therapist told me that it took me a really long time to get angry. It makes her so happy that her clients get angry. It means that they recognize the injustice. But if you grew up in the church like I did, that probably didn't sound right. We were taught that anger is the enemy of holiness, the opposite of love, and the fast track to distraction. Today, I want to show you how this teaching isn't just wrong. It's actually a form of control that makes you trapped in this cycle of abuse and self-harm, leaving you struggling to get angry at anyone else but yourself. By the end of this video, I hope you'll understand how reclaiming your anger is probably the most spiritual thing you can do. And I will give you practical tools to work through your anger somatically in your body, because this isn't just about changing your mind. This is about changing your lived experience with injustice. Let's start with how we even got here. They convinced you that righteous anger only belongs to God and authority figures. When pastors rage from the pulpit about sin and rebellion, that is holy anger. When parents explode because you disobeyed them, that is justified discipline. But when you feel angry about being mistreated, that is pride, rebellion, lack of submission. This creates a system where only people in power are allowed to get angry, and everyone else living under it must absorb the anger without reciprocating. This theological programming creates this fucked up system in your emotional response. When someone mistreats you, your first instinct isn't anger, it's self-examination. What did I do wrong? How can I be better? Maybe I was too sensitive. And the examples of anger that surface in your subconscious are extreme. You have Cain killing Abel and his anger being condemned as selfish, destructive, and murderous. When Moses threw down the tablets, that anger showed us his frustration and his ego. When Jonah got angry at God for showing mercy to Nineveh, God rebuked him for it. And you certainly don't want to be that too much, too selfish, too human thing. And we certainly don't talk about how a healthy anger looks like. So you can be more meek and more mild, more Christ-like, because apparently that is all Christ is, meek and mild. And so you delay, you doubt, you suppress. You're conditioned to give everyone else the benefit of the doubt while interrogating your own reactions. By the time you realize, wait a minute, that was fucked up, the moment has passed. The moment to say no, to defend yourself, to set a boundary, gone. The question is, who does not have to be accountable when you are only angry at yourself? Because the person or the system that has harmed you walks away clean when you immediately turn that anger inward. Your "I'm too sensitive, I should have known better" is their get out of jail free card. This is why systems of oppression love self-blame. It's the perfect crime. They hurt you and you punish yourself for it. The abuser never has to take accountability because you're too busy attacking yourself to demand it from them. The somatic reality is that suppressing anger doesn't make it disappear. It redirects it. Your body keeps the score of every injustice you have swallowed. Your amygdala still fires when injustice occurs, but chronic suppression teaches your nervous system to treat your emotions as your enemy. Oops. There's that thing I need to suppress again. The best way that I can think of this particular bodily expression of your soul is what Bell Hooks calls a spiritual zombie. Someone going through the motions of faith while your soul slowly dies from neglect. Your anger gets trapped in your muscles, your breathing, your nervous system. And maybe you do learn logically that anger is healthy, you should feel it, but you can't think your way through it, you have to move through it. In order to do that, some things have to align. Is there really an expression of anger that doesn't make you become Cain or worse, Satan? Let's get the Satan thing out of the way first. When you look at Satan in the Bible, he is surprisingly not very angry. Satan is cynical and calculating, but in Job, for example, the actual angry character in Job, It's not Satan, it's Job. And God doesn't condemn Job's anger. God enters into dialogue with it. Job got angry with God, and Job was declared righteous. Isn't that interesting? The famous verse, be angry and sin not, from Ephesians 4:26, it doesn't outlaw anger. It regulates it. It invites us to steward it. The prohibition isn't against feeling anger, but against letting it fester into bitterness, into revenge. This verse acknowledges that anger exists, can exist without sin. The Hebrew word for anger, af, appears over 250 times in the Old Testament, and it describes both human anger and divine anger. Divine anger appears consistently throughout Scripture. If anger really only indicates pride and sinfulness and rebellion, why does God get so angry? We are made in the image of that divine experience of anger, and yet feeling it, embodying it, makes us ungodly? Let's think again. I think it's helpful to look at how angry God gets and what gets God angry, so we can understand how godly it is to be angry. In Psalm 7:11, we have a God who displays wrath every day. But against what? Oppression of the poor, exploitation of the vulnerable, and leaders who abuse their power. God's anger, it seems, consistently defends those who cannot defend themselves. When Jesus flipped the table at the temple, it does seem like a personal tantrum, and it is. I think we're so scared to say that it actually is. But he's doing so to disrupt a system that exploited the poor and turned worship into profit. And you know what God gets especially angry at? Spiritual abuse like that. We also have a case in Jeremiah 23:1-2, where God rages against the shepherds who destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture. Religious leaders who harm those who they are meant to protect provoke the strongest anger from God. The Hebrew word katzaf describes this fierce protective anger that rises up in the defense of the vulnerable. But this isn't the only time you are allowed to get angry in the Bible. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus teaches about anger directly. This gets quoted a lot. You have heard from those of old, you shall not murder. But I say to you, whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of judgment. Notice the phrase without a cause, even here, because Jesus is acknowledging that some anger has legitimate cause. The passage continues with Jesus condemning anger that leads to contempt and insult. But the focus is on how anger is expressed and impacts others, not on the fact that anger exists and is felt. When you see Jesus throw the table, we can see the ways that it is being distinguished. There is anger that humanizes, there is anger that dehumanizes. There's anger that serves the self, and there's anger that serves justice. And those things can be the same if you are the one that has been treated unjustly. Paul's instruction in Ephesians to be angry and sin not comes with a crucial context. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth, only such as is good for building up. The focus isn't on eliminating anger, but on how it can build up instead of tear down. The biblical concern was never with feeling anger, but ultimately how it is expressed and what it serves. Even the call to the meek and mild thing needs examination. The original Greek prautes doesn't mean weakness. It actually means controlled strength. It's a word that is used to describe a war horse that responds to the slightest touch of the reins. So there's a sensitivity in the controlled strength, and it is definitely not the absence of anger, but anger under the governance of wisdom and sensitivity. When Jesus says, love your enemies, he did not say, don't feel angry when they harm you. He's saying, don't let your anger turn you into what you hate. His love for enemies was so profound that he got angry at the systems, destroying them too. His anger at the Pharisees wasn't personal anger, wasn't personal hatred. It was grief over how their hypocrisy kept people from experiencing God's love. Turn the other cheek operates in the same framework. It's about not responding to personal slights with violence, but But Jesus did not turn the other cheek to systemic oppression. He turned over tables. So when your anger aligns with what evokes divine anger, injustice, abuse, systems that crush the vulnerable, which, by the way, all can include you, how could you be rebelling against God? You are partnering with divine justice, with divine rage. If you're still with me, take a breath. This is hard stuff, and I see you. This is what we know now. Anger is information. It tells you when your boundaries are being violated, when injustice is happening, when something needs to change. Aristotle understood this. He wrote that the person who never gets angry at injustice is actually lacking in virtue, not exemplifying it. And from what we know from feminist theorists, what anger tells us isn't just personal information, it's political information. Often, when women are expressing anger, we are challenging the fundamental assumption that we should absorb mistreatment silently. In The Second Sex, Simone de Beauvoir showed us that women's anger is systemically invalidated to maintain patriarchal control. She tells us that women are taught to internalize oppression as natural rather than recognize it as an injustice worth fighting for. This creates some kind of anger amnesia, right? When you cannot trust your own emotional response to injustice. In The Uses of Anger, Audre Lorde wrote, "Anger is loaded with information and energy. Every woman has a well-stocked arsenal of anger, potentially useful against those oppressions, personal and institutional, which brought that anger into being." Again, the problem isn't that women experience anger. It's that we've been taught to aim it at the wrong target. For Sara Ahmed, anger is creative. It works to create a language with which to respond to that which one is against. Anger, for Ahmed, doesn't just signal problems, it creates solutions. She coined the term feminist killjoy for women who get labeled as too emotional for challenging the systems of oppression. The killjoy is killing the systems, preventing the real joy from happening in the first place. What these thinkers understand is that when marginalized people are told that their anger is inappropriate, what they're really being told is that their perceptions of the injustice is invalid. On a grander scale, your anger isn't just about you. It's about the systems that shaped the injustice that you are responding to. This is why your anger is so threatening to oppressive systems. It is the personal is the political. Jacquelyn Grant, who is a founder of womanist theology, argues that when oppressed people are told that their anger is unchristian, it's actually a theological weapon used to maintain oppression. Delores Williams connects this to one of the most troubling stories in Scripture, Hagar in Genesis 16. Here's a woman who was sexually exploited by Abraham, abused by Sara, and when she finally fled for her safety, an angel of the Lord found her and told her to return to her mistress and submit to her. This passage has been used for centuries to spiritualize women's suffering and justify sending abuse victims back to their abusers. But Williams offers this radical reread. She asks, what if Hagar's story isn't prescriptive, but just descriptive? What if it's not telling us this is what God wants, but revealing what patriarchal systems, what church systems, what angelic systems can co-opt even divine messengers like the angel? Williams argues that Hagar represents every woman who has been told that her anger at her abuser is sinful, that her desire for freedom is rebellion, that submission to harm is God's will. The text says that Hagar was promised by the angel descendants too numerous to count, only if she returned to abuse. Williams asks the crucial question here. What kind of God requires a woman to endure sexual exploitation and domestic violence to receive blessing? Either God is endorsing abuse, or something else is happening here entirely. In this reading, Hagar's story exposes how quickly religious authority can be weaponized against the vulnerable. When women today are told to suppress their anger at mistreatment, to calm down, to submit to harmful relationships, to spiritualize away their basic right to safety, we are being given the same message that Hagar received. What if Hagar's rage was exactly the right response? What if her flight from abuse wasn't an act of rebellion, but an act of faith? We need to know that our anger isn't sinful, but sacred. It's your soul's way of saying, this isn't right. When I talk about this on TikTok, I got a lot of comments from people worried that they become this angry person that threaten to harm them. But reclaiming your anger isn't about becoming your abuser. It's about being able to access your anger when justice demands it. We need to learn to recognize the anger signals in our body. Our nervous system responds to injustice often before our mind does. If you feel your feet on the ground right now and notice your breathing, when injustice happens, you know this. The jaw starts to tense. There's this heat in your chest. There's an urge to defend yourself. All of these bodily sensations are your allies, not your enemies. If you cannot immediately start to articulate and advocate for yourself, one of the first steps that really helped me was just saying to myself, even if it's just in my head, but when your throat has been closed to anger, it needs some help to open up. And sometimes, ouch, is all I need to acknowledge to myself that I have been hurt, that harm has happened here. When you are not angry, practice screaming into a pillow. Your body needs to remember that your anger has a voice. If you're in the stage of stewing and fuming, running the cycle of, am I too sensitive? Was that right? Or I'm just so pissed and this has nowhere to go. Try the questions that God used to engage with Job's anger. You don't need to calm down. God did not tell Job to calm down when Job was furious and demanding answers. I am performing some very liberal translations here from God's questions. They're not perfect, but it's somewhere to start. Here's what God says to Job. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Where was I when this situation began? What do I not know about the full context of what is happening? God asks Job again. Will you really annul my judgment? Will you condemn me that you may be justified? This translates into making someone else completely wrong so I can be completely right. Is my anger about justice or a need to be vindicated? God asks Job again, do you have an arm like God? Can you thunder with a voice like his? My humble translation, do I actually have power to control the situation? What can I actually change? What is within my control and what is outside of my control? Where is my thunderous voice? How far does my thunderous voice actually reach? God asks Job again, can you hunt prey for the lioness or satisfy the appetites of young lions? My translation, can I meet all of my own needs? Am I expecting other people to do something for me that I can't even do for myself? The point of these questions is not to dismiss your anger. It's to actually dialogue with it, to feel through it with agency. This isn't about becoming aggressive. It's about being grounded in your own worth and using your anger as a compass towards justice, whether that manifests in setting boundaries or confronting someone about unfair treatment. When you've been taught to suppress your anger in your body for years, your muscles are very good at doing that. So how do we change our body's relationship to anger? If you want to join me right now, feel your feet on the ground, take a deep breath, and think about something that makes you feel angry. Notice what's happening in your body. Is your jaw clenching? Are your shoulders rising? What's happening to your breath? Is it getting shallower and shallower? Now, if you're still with me, try this. Instead of pushing this feeling away, breathe into it. Breathe into the jaw. Thank you. Thank you, anger. Thank you for protecting me. Say to your shoulders, breathe into your shoulders. Thank you for caring about my well-being. Say to your breath, thank you for noticing this injustice. Let's move that energy. Shake your hands, roll your shoulders, make a sound, even if it's just a deep ah. Your body needs to know that anger can, instead of just getting stuck in you, that it can flow through. For me, the key to any of this work is to do it not with the intention of getting rid of the anger, to get to the other side, to be less angry. If you do breath work, breathe in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 5. Breathe in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. And you activate your parasympathetic nervous system. If you do all the right things, the breathing techniques, the meditation, if you do all of them for the purpose of getting rid of the anger, it's not going to work long term. When you do breath work, if you do breath work, can you do it with the intention of staying present with the anger instead of trying to push it away, instead of being overwhelmed by it? And some of you may know that anger is this mobilizing energy. Do jumping jacks, punch pillows, dance wildly, but can you also do that not with the intention of getting rid of it as fast as you can? The things that feel difficult to say, like the word no, for example, you can practice that. People can sense the incongruence in you when you say that without feeling the no. So practice. Plant your feet, tits up, shoulders back, and just try saying out loud, no, this does not work for me. Say it until it feels like your grounded no. You can even create a rage ritual. I often think women's ministry should include an activity where we just go to church and get a bunch of tables before the altar and flip them. But you can do the same at your own endeavor. Designate a time and space for processing intense rage. You might go for a run, you might scream in your car. Give it a safe container to express itself. And when the anger is intense, commit to taking a pause before making decisions. Most of you, if you're this far into this video, probably won't struggle with this. Take the time you need to honor your anger's message. If you're someone who frees instead of feeling your anger, start small. Notice the micro moments of irritation or frustration, which are often anger in disguise. And practice saying out loud, I don't like that, about small things like, I don't like that it's cold in this room, this music on the radio. I don't like how you spoke to me. Your anger might very well be buried under layers of depression, anxiety, or numbness. And that's okay. Your anger has just been protecting you by staying hidden because that's what it was taught to do. When you look for support from family, friends, therapist, just notice this. Are they trying to fix your anger, or are they trying to help you befriend it? But your anger is actually your soul's way of staying alive in systems that's trying to kill it. When you befriend your anger, you're developing what the mystics called the fierce compassion. Love that is strong enough to say no to what harms the beloved. And to forgive. Forgiveness often requires passing through anger. And you cannot forgive what you have not acknowledged as wrong. This is what I hope for you. That you stop absorbing other people's emotions while denying your own. I hope that you don't smile while you're being mistreated. I hope you model for others that your emotions, your anger is not sin, but information. I hope you recognize when dynamics are unjust and use that anger to make strategic decisions. I hope you don't internalize systemic problems as personal failures. I hope you stop perpetuating cycles of emotional suppression. I hope spiritually you stop apologizing for what you were designed to feel. I hope you recognize that the God who rages at injustice is not offended by your anger at injustice. This isn't going to be a linear path. We are gonna slip back into old patterns. We might suppress our anger when we want to express it, or explode when we meant to be grounded. That is normal, that is human, that is part of this process, because this is a fundamental rewiring of how you relate to one of your strongest emotions. If you've spent decades suppressing your anger, it's going to take time to befriend it. If you've spent years having your anger shamed, it's going to take practice to trust it again. The information that your anger delivers, is not always going to be comfortable information or easy information. But when you listen to it, examine it, and channel it toward justice, and yes, that can be your own fucking justice, you become a force of healing in the world. This work is not going to look glamorous. It might get messy. Sometimes you might hurt people. Sometimes you might need to apologize and start over. But this humanity, this messy feeling, boundary setting glory is exactly what the world needs. And let me know in the comments, what part of this video cracked something open for you? Let's build a space where anger is honored, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. And subscribe for more holy shit moments where we reclaim our sacred humanity.